Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here and joining us via the internet and from Poly High School. We're here again with our two instructional technology coaches from the Office of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development, and they're going to be talking to you about managing your students' technology use. So they're going to cover cyberbullying, they're going to cover screen time, and some resources for parents. So I'm going to hand it off to Rick Biscocho, and then we also have Javier Di Santiago.
Thank you. Well, it's really good to be back, and I think that you're going to get out of tonight a lot of practical understanding, not so much about technology, but really kind of the psyche behind being a parent that wants to participate in their child's years when they're with us. And we're going to look at this evening really from a different framework from how technology is shown either in the media, but we're going to take a strengths-based approach versus the deficit model. And what we're really going to do essentially tonight is provide for you information along with the questions that you have, an opportunity to look at not only the technology use that's happening with your student, but also to consider the things that you do as well that can help and benefit your child as they navigate through this world of social media, digital use, digital footprint, lots of things. But it still comes down to some basic factors that as parents, we still need to hold true. And it provides for us avenues to really help our kids. So that's our goal for tonight, is to look at it from a strengths-based approach. That means that essentially what we're doing is we're going to give you information and tools to help you be proactive in the things that your kids are doing, not only in the classroom, but when they're here in Long Beach. And the great thing that you need to know as parents is that you don't have to know everything. In fact, we don't know everything, because as soon as we learn it, there's something new, right? I'm sure that you understand that. And even the way that students are learning is different from what we were talking about last week. So the key for tonight is that we're going to take that proactive approach, and we really want to build in the understanding that there's a bigger message here with technology. So what I'd like to do as we move on, in terms of the targets, you'll notice that one of the first things we're looking at are the demands of a modern society. So last week we talked about how things shifted. We're going to talk about that and go in depth a lot more today with that. We're going to look at some of the common safety practices to keep our children, our students, safe when they're online. Because you know as well as I do, we're all able to access the internet at school. And for lots of us at home, they can access the internet as well. So we'll be looking at that. We'll also understand the idea of social media and how it can provide an avenue, positive avenue, but we also need to be realistic and look at some of the other aspects of social media. And then the last thing we're going to do is look at how kids can balance their digital use. And the key word there is not digital use. Actually, the key word there is balance, right? And when you think of it as parents, as grandparents, as families, balance is a really good word for a lot of areas in our life that we deal with, right? So if you think about our health, balance is a great word, isn't it? When we think about our use on technology, balance is an amazing word. But what we will also see tonight, too, are some of the things that maybe we haven't considered, right? And there are some things that we do that we don't even realize that we're doing. And so as we move on to the next slide, you're going to notice that we're going to take a poll. And in this poll, you'll notice that there are some questions that you have. So I'm going to explain what you're going to do. And those of you with phones, it's going to be super easy because all you're going to have to do is pull out your phone, and you'll notice that there's some online activities. So for those of you that order food, you're going to click on that. That's what you do. For those of you that stream media, like Netflix and Amazon Prime and all those things, social media, email, or if you've ever done an online application. So we're going to let you participate. And for the audience that's online, you can also go. So what I want to do is I want to show you how we're going to do this. So you're going to need to get your phone. And from your phone, you're going to go to a browser on there. And you're going to type in www.menti.com. And then you're going to enter the code. Now, don't enter that code. That's just the instructions, right? And once you get to the menti.com, it'll ask you to type in a code, 3 two-digit numbers. So go ahead and show that. And once you type in menti.com, the code is 85, 60, and 83. Now, if you do any of those 5 things, go ahead and rank them. So if the one that you do the most is email, do that as your first choice. But if you don't do, if you've never done an online application, don't answer that, and then you hit submit. What we'll be able to do is we'll be able to see what that looks like live as people are starting to populate this poll. Because you'll notice from the responses that we actually start to use technology quite a lot. Now, are there any questions before, if you haven't already? Go ahead and go to menti.com and then type in 85, 60, and 83, and then you start to do that. So we're going to step out of the slide deck for a second. And if we can go to the next tab, and here you're going to see right there, yep, and go ahead and hit present. And we're going to see that in real time that there are 7 people online actually answering that right now. We're seeing now there's 9. And what I like to point out right now is that all 5 are being used, right? Even though for some of us we're like, what? Can't believe you do that, right? Or what, you do that? So here you can see, according to this, that not only are all these online activities being done by us as families, but what it does is it points to the shift. Remember we talked about the shift? The shift of what we used to do. So email is a form of communication. And for a lot of us, that is a primary way that we communicate with either our supervisors or the people in our families. Social media is number 2, which I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised on the ordering food. I think that for some of us, maybe we're not being as honest as we are. I don't know. But the streaming media, for a lot of us, that's how we watch television. Now, my daughter, who lives out of state, actually watches television on her phone, which is really strange to me because I still have a TV at home and I like using the TV, right? But streaming media is now another shift. So here we can see that there are clearly some activities that we continue to do. If you consider this, you're now looking at people that are children that are growing up where this is not only going to be common, but new technologies are going to come up. And more importantly, we need to see the value of how we're building in all of these activities. Because as you parents were populating this is technology use that you're doing. So we also need to look at what our families are doing, but we also need to look at what we're doing as well. So it isn't always necessarily bad, but we're doing it as well. And so as we move on to the next slide, Javier is going to really talk about the demands of a modern society in the 21st century.
As we saw from that quick little poll, what we do digitally now has really changed. How we do things has changed, and that's the shift that we're talking about. That it's not like when we grew up, right? Sometimes we don't even have to go to the store anymore. Stuff gets delivered. So there's lots of things that have changed, and that shift has really caused a lot of screen time. So you've heard that, I don't know if you've heard that phrase of screen time, but it's almost necessary not to have screen time because you can't fill out a job application without going to a computer. You can't fill out a Social Security application or DNV without going on a screen. Now we are viewing movies. Now you don't have to wait and rent and go buy or rent a DVD. You can stream it right from your home with your smart TVs. That's more screen time. Your banking now is done online. You don't have to go to the bank in the branch. As we're going through these different digital activities now, that they used to be face-to-face. Now they're on a screen, okay? And not because we like being on a screen, because it's more convenient. And for some of the companies, it's actually cheaper to offer online banking because they don't have to pay for a teller, right? We also have to make our vacations online. We could book an entire vacation, flight, car, activities just by going online. We also have checking our grades. We talked about School Loop last week. You can now check your grades online, see how your students are doing, see what they submitted online. Even booking a doctor can now be done online. You can just make an appointment. So all of these new things, email communication and social media, are the new reality for our students and for ourselves too, because we're part of this society. And this society now requires that a lot of these things move digitally for different reasons. Most of the time, you could probably understand it's because it's cheaper, it's more accessible, right? And it's just more convenient for us. We get more stuff done with this, okay? Here is a quick video we're going to show you. And in this video, what I want you to look at and is really just a very good visual of the shift that is happening in our society. In this video is going to show you what a typical desk looked like back even 20 years ago and how some of those things have disappeared. As you look through this video, some of you, especially all of us, will probably notice some things that we used to use that we no longer use because now there's a digital version of that, okay? So I want you to take a look at this video, and as you're watching it, see how many things you have seen, and now nobody actually uses those kind of things physically because there's a digital component to it. So let's take a quick look. The one thing that I was, when I first watched this video, the one thing I noticed was the newspaper. I used to get the newspaper every day. And then I went to only weekends, and now I just get it online on my iPad. So that has really changed, and it saves a lot of paper, so it doesn't have to come deliver it to it. But those are the changing things in our society that are happening that are changing the way we do things. And when these shifts happen, different people have different responses to it, okay? We think about the person that probably lost a job because they no longer have to deliver newspapers. So some people go ahead and adjust to it, take the iPad version of the newspaper and embrace it. They like it, okay? Others people just ignore it. They get upset about, they like the physical paper, and they just, you know what, I'm just not gonna do it anymore. Other people are just scared of this new digital world, right? Especially when it comes to like online shopping. I don't know if you remember, but the first time I bought something online, I was hesitant about putting my credit card into the payment option, right? Now it has become it's automatic. So there's different approaches and different responses to these shifts, right? And depending on our comfort level with technology or our understanding of technology, that will influence how we respond to these shifts. But the shifts are going to happen no matter what. Things are going to change, and that's just the only thing that's constant is change. So how are we going to respond to this new change? Okay. Now, one of the new changes that is happening for your students, okay, is the cell phones. This has become a trend now where almost every single person here has a cell phone. Now it's uncommon for even a student not to have a cell phone. As you can see from this image here, even worldwide, this is a trend where people are opting just for a cell phone instead of a landline, just because of its convenience. This graph shows here in the US how landlines have declined and the number of cell phones have increased. That is a shift, a change. Okay? What are the implications of this change? Now every single person is walking around with a cell phone on their pocket with access to the internet, right? We have information in our fingertips, right? We talk about having the need to create questions that cannot be answered by Googling it, right? We no longer need to, we don't need to memorize certain facts because we can just look them up, okay? So that shift has really led to an increase of social media, especially with young children, your children. They have a phone, and most parents get a phone for the number one reason, the same reason I got my children phones, is for security. We want to know that they're safe. We want to know where they're at. We want them to call us when they get somewhere, even though they forget, but we want them to call us, right? All we want is just a little text message saying, I'm safe. And we do that as parents, that we worry about our children. But when we gave them that phone, we also gave them access to the internet, World Wide Web, and access to social media, right? So what does that look like for a typical teenager? In this video, you're going to hear from two teenagers talking about their social media use and just their digital use in general, okay? This is a typical story of two teenagers. Now, as you watch this video, I want you to think about how does their experience relate to your own children's experience. How much digital use do your children have? How much social media are they using? Some of the numbers that they talk about will be shocking, but then I think it would be a good conversation point for your own children about how much time they're on their phones, on social media, on streaming devices. Although that is the new shift, right? We just talked about that things are digital. We are going to be on screens more than ever before because things are just on devices more. So as you watch this video, just take a look at and hear how much social media use they use. So from that video, how many of you related and saw some of your children in there? How many people have children that play video games? How many people have children who have their own laptop? Okay, so quite a few, right? This is the new norm. This is the shift that we're talking about, is that things are becoming digital. It's natural that kids are going to be on these devices because that's where everything's at for them. Their friends, their entertainment, their information. For some students, even their homework is online, right? Because they're using Google Classroom or Khan Academy. They're going to be on those devices. Not because of their choice, but that's the way that things are currently the system. That's the way the system is structured. A lot of things are moving to digital versions of these old different strategies that they used to have. But at the same time, in this modern world, there's some skills that students need in this new modern world. Now, the things that we're going to cover right now come directly from companies who have said that they were asked, what do you want employees to come in with? What kind of skills? Okay. Now, in the future, or currently right now, they're asking for students who can critically think. That's a big thing. Okay. Can they problem solve? Can they come across a problem, analyze it, and come up with some strategic solutions? Another skill that they're asking for is collaboration. Can you work well with others? Can you get along with others? Can you work as a team towards a common goal? Another big push is collaboration. The next one is just creativity. In the future, creativity is going to make the difference between just a simple solution to a creative solution. So those people who have that creativity gene, and most of us can actually foster it through just experiences, creativity is going to be huge in the future because it allows for new ideas to be developed. So the next one is communication. So they're asking for people to come in with good communication skills, be able to speak clearly, comprehensible, and talk to other people without hesitation. So these 4 skills are commonly known as the 4 C's. So these are the new norm for our society, our modern society. These are the skills that need to be fostered not only in schools, but at home. As you can see, none of these are related to a certain content. They're not ELA related. They're not related to math or science or history. These are skills that could be developed in any classroom or in any home. Just having the right mindset that these are the 21st century skills that are going to be needed for our modern society. So we know that today we think of our house as just more complicated, complex than it was 50 years ago. We have to have the digital skills to know how to get online, how to launch a browser, how to fill out a online application. We need those skills because without that, we can't make doctor's appointments. Without those skills, we cannot do online banking. We have to know how to refresh a browser. We need to know what those buttons mean in the browser. At the same time, we need the students to have the 4 C's, okay? Be able to critically think, problem solve, communicate, and collaborate. Because those are the jobs, those are the requirements of the new modern society jobs. So with that in mind.
And one thing that I'd like to add as well is the fact that how many of you have heard that there are, that right now in school, students are being taught to learn and learning skills that they're going to actually need in the future for jobs that haven't been created yet. Some of you may have heard that before, but what it does is it provides an avenue for us as parents to say, what are the things that we need to shift in how we're thinking so that we can provide these avenues for them, not just from school, but also from home as well. So what we want to do right now is talk about some of the common safety practices to keep our children safe online. Now, a couple of things that we want to do is kind of preface it with some of the research that we're looking at. So on the next slide, you'll notice that you have a down arrow and an up arrow.
So if you look on the left side, the research says that it is very common now for children to have less of a desire to hang out with other friends in local events. So it's different now where when we grew up, we used to go to the park, go to the mall, hang out with them. Now the research is telling us that they're okay because they're hanging out with their friends online on a video game or through social media. They're constantly communicating with their friends, so that desire to be with them physically has declined. Wanting to drive has also declined. Why? Well, why would I don't need to go to the movies. I can just stream it. I don't need to go to a restaurant. I can just have it ordered and delivered. Those things are changing. The way our students are responding to that is changing. Dating, once again, that's also a trend that has gone down. Getting enough sleep is also a trend that's gone down. A lot of people or a lot of research attributes that just because they're having their phones with them while they're in their bedroom going to sleep. It is very common for a teenager nowadays to sleep with their phone next to their pillow, right? Just because of that need to be always connected. And wanting independence. That is a big trend of coming, that's actually showing a downward trend.
There's this upward trend. I did a very unscientific poll. I basically texted a lot of my teacher friends at their school sites. And these are teachers that teach from kinder up to 5th grade. There wasn't one classroom where the teacher said that they didn't have a smartphone. Now, not all of them have them, but for example, in the kinder class, maybe 4 or 5 had them, but they had them even at kinder. And at upper grades, the numbers were a lot more. So in classes of 35, you had 30 to 33 people having smartphones because that was the trend that was happening. They're more likely to feel lonely when they are changing, and that shift of not only the idea of hanging out with friends, but it's really in isolation, and that can provide an area where it can be truly dangerous for them. We'll talk about that a little later when we talk about the whole idea of cyberbullying. But keep in mind, too, that whenever we look at this, we also have to look at that there are things that positively affect how we're using technology. So we want to also bring that too. Many students have multiple social media accounts, and as we look at that tonight, some of you may not know that your children have those multiple accounts, and maybe that's a conversation that you may have to have. Time on digital devices, as Javier was talking about, really the time that they're spending on it isn't necessarily recreational. Sometimes it's conditional on the work that they have at their school or even on their sports teams. So there's a lot of time that's using technology on their digital devices. Texting friends, that is a common way of communicating now. If you look over on the other side, the whole idea of wanting independence, hanging out with friends, to them, they're kind of meeting that need, when in actuality, they're isolated. And the fact that there's a bigger dependence of parents. There is research that talks about how even after college, a lot of students, after they graduate, will move back home because they're not able to get the jobs that they thought they would get, or for other reasons. But there's a lot more dependence on the parents that are there. I think it's also important to think about that as families, we need to consider a couple of things. Number one, this is what the research is saying. But I think as families, there's some constructs and some rules that we can put into place because as families, we want the best for them, right? So when they talk about these areas in our lives, consider that there's some areas where they can be phone free, so that can help us to build that communication, that creativity, the critical thinking. And so one thing that we have talked about as an office was 3 areas in your home that are phone free. So one of them is the car. Man, that is so scary, right? Are you saying that they can't use their phone in the car? What? Here in LA, consider it. The dinner table. How many of you have had a meal where you only see this part of the head of your child because all they're doing is looking down? They'll look up to see what's for dinner, and then it goes back down right away, right? And then what Javier was talking about too, the bedroom. Some of us are literally connected to that phone all the time. So those are considerations that possibly that we could make that could benefit us as families. The other thing too is when we think about that, it comes down to how we are going to introduce and continue to manage these devices that our children that we want to be successful are going to use. And I think they're really broken up into 3 areas. Javier's going to talk about the first 2.
So we've been talking about this change, or how technology has really become a part of our lives. The change that children now all have cell phones for the most part. They have access to the internet or a device. How are we going to respond to that change? Remember, we talked about how we were going to respond. So as parents, how could we respond? Well, one of the ways is to become an enforcer, which I admit I was an enforcer when I first had my children with cell phones. What is an enforcer? As the name says, this is one who gives strict limits to kids. Okay, you can have the phone for 1 hour, and that's it, and take it away. Right? You give limits, you punish, you ground, you take away the device, and you limit it as much as possible as you want to. No computer access. Some people I've heard that just turn off the internet, take off the little box and just put it away and turn off the internet. So that's the enforcer. That's the one way to respond. Another way to respond is to be an enabler. Sometimes this is just too much. I don't want to have these arguments and these fights with my children. I'm just going to want to be their friend, let them do whatever they want, because I don't want to have that argument or that confrontation. So those are the 2 common responses. What we want to talk about today is a more positive response that allows your children to really learn what it's like to have a device in their pocket. Just like when the children got a bicycle for the first time, we didn't just give them a bike. We helped them get on the bike and taught them how to do that, right? When children started to learn how to cross the street, we didn't just throw them out there to learn for themselves. We showed them how to look left, how to look right to cross the street. So Rick's going to talk to you about another way to respond to this shift.
This one, really, it's the media mentor. And so as he puts up all the rest, I want you to see a few of the things that are happening here. So we go from the enforcer that essentially says, look, I'm in control and you have no say, right? To the enabler that says, I have no say because you're going to do it anyway, right? And that could have some negative ramifications. And what I want you to focus on is not that they are engaged in media, not that they're playing video games, that they're online. It's that word with. And that's the balance. That's the key. Because in order for us to know what our kids are doing, essentially we have to be with them, don't we? Yeah, it takes time. Yeah, it takes commitment. But what you're doing has so many more benefits because you're building a relationship that can continue to build trust even when they're away from you. And to provide that, I think that the tone here with the media mentor is that they want to provide balance, but they're doing it in a way with the communication of the student as well. To me, that's very, very powerful because what you're saying to them is that I want to protect you, but I want you to have a say. And I think that we tend to look at the situations with our children that we have to always be this over-encompassing person, when in actuality, once we start to hear what they really need, boy, they're going to really open up, and you'll be amazed at the power of what they can actually start to do. When we think of the media mentor, the idea of with their kids, to me, is such an amazing shift in how we parent. But we could also say they're reading with their kids, right? They are doing their homework with their kids. They are taking them to sports games with their kids. So those are relational building activities that provide for that media mentor with that. So Javier is going to talk about some specific aspects of what that means when you're talking about with, that idea of with.
So as we're talking about being a media mentor as a parent, you might be thinking that's going to be a lot of work, right? Parenting is a lot of work. And right now, Common Sense Media gives us some tips in terms of what can we do as parents to become media mentors to our children, right? Because if we don't do it, nobody else is. We can't depend on other people to do it. So what can we do? We could talk about media and tech. That is their world. We can't ignore it. That is happening now, right? Things are digital. We have to talk about that. Play and watch and learn together, right? If your son or daughter wants to buy a new game, sit with them and learn the game with them. Find out what's happening there while they're online. Who are they talking to while they're playing this game? What's the whole purpose of this game? Follow their interest, okay? If you follow their interest, that just leads to more communication, more understanding, more just knowing of what's happening in their lives. And then teach new skills. We as parents have experience. We have to, some of the experience is still going to be valid when they're interacting with people online, because we know about respect, we know about integrity. All of those things are still valuable. They're still meaningful when students are interacting with others online or doing whatever they're doing online. All of those skills that we have as parents, we can still transfer those skills to them, how to be respectful when they're speaking to someone online. And then do your own research. At the end of today's presentation, you're going to have a plethora of resources where you can do more reading about these topics so you can educate yourself of what's happening in society. Some of those social media sites that you saw in the video, you probably didn't even heard about. I know that my friend Rick just started using TikTok as research for this presentation. I had to tell him to delete it because he was getting a little bit consumed over it. And we never even...
Being a concerned parent, and he wanted balance in my life.
I was, because, you know, those things, and we have to remember that the main purpose of social media is to keep you on the screen as long as possible. And even as adults, I know that it's sometimes difficult to turn off that social media, right? So even as adults, we're still dealing with that ourselves. And we have to be mentors to our children to show by example that we can put the phone down when we're at dinner.
You've been given a lot of information. I think that this slide really exemplifies our role as parents and what we can try to do. If there was one here that you feel either that you've tried or that you would like to consider over the next week or so, which do you think is one of these things? Now, keep in mind too that the middle says a healthy relationship. There's more to it, isn't there? Right? It's not just that. But when we consider it, are there things, so to the audience here, is there something that maybe you didn't consider before that now, hey, I do need to consider that? So you've had some time to kind of process this. Is there one that you feel would be helpful in your situation? Anyone? Yeah, they want to think about it. Okay. All right. So let's move on, yeah.
So, in our new technology-reliant society, what can we do as parents to make sure that our students are safe online? One of the things that we have to be very cautious about is their data. Nowadays, our data is everything. You've heard about identity theft. That's very, those kind of buzzwords that you hear on the news. So what can you do as parents to make sure that your students' data are not compromised? One thing is to look at the privacy settings on apps and websites. They're usually, I know, hidden, but they're always available, okay? Especially for any social media. What is being shared, okay? And as you know, as your phone settings, there's privacy settings that allow the app to access your contacts. Be careful about that. Because what that happens is when the social media accesses your contacts, now they're expanding their reach in your child's phone. The next thing you could do is beware of phishing scams. This is where our understanding of our experience of if it's too good to be true, it must not be true, can come in. So your students will get offers through messages, text messages, through social media about buying something. Be careful about that, especially with information. Talk to your children about if they get any kind of message that's offering them something for free, to share that with you so you can talk to them about whether or not that's safe. I'll tell you right now, most of the time, it's not safe. Nobody gives you something for nothing, okay? Don't open emails from strangers. Don't use unsecure Wi-Fi networks. Kids love free Wi-Fi, especially on their iPads and their devices. Be careful about going to a network you don't know who owns this network, okay? When we go to Starbucks, we know Starbucks has Google, but that's still an open network. When you go to a hospital, there's Wi-Fi now. Those are a little more secure, but if you don't know who owns this Wi-Fi network, do not connect to it. Just because it's free doesn't mean you can access it. And if it's free, it might be free for a reason. So if you don't know who owns that Wi-Fi network, the recommendation is you stay off of it. Also, turn off location services. A lot of apps like Instagram have location services. So students are taking pictures on Instagram. Those pictures are geolocated, okay? If their Instagram account is not private, anybody who has access to that can know their location. So be careful about that. Anybody who's out there just wanting to do things that are not right can use that information for a bad reason. So turn off geolocation on social media apps. Use strong passwords, okay? Passwords get hacked all the time. Always use a strong password. You'll have a tool at the end of presentation on how to create a strong password for your students, okay? So you cannot have those simple passwords anymore. And then at home, use antivirus protection on your computers. Okay, I know it's an extra cost, but the technology has evolved with the cost is there. It's there for a reason. It's really, really helpful to have that on your home computers. If, there's people at Best Buy everywhere that will help you set it up properly. Nowadays, it's pretty simple, download and install. So always keep your antivirus protection updated to help you protect yourselves at home from phishing, from people stealing your passwords and things like that. Because the reality is that it is happening, okay? It is happening.
So next we'd like to look at social media, and obviously this is not exhaustive. These are apps that your children may be using. There are lots of benefits to using social media. There's a lot of educational resources that are being done with Twitter. But what I'd like to do is have some audience participation. And you'll notice that you'll have 1, 2, or 3. So I'm going to give you some facts, and you're going to decide which platform or which app that is, okay? So one of the things, I'm going to give you a fact, and then you're going to tell me the app that it's on, okay? So the first one is, this name comes from a mashup of Instant Camera and Telegram. So which one is it? It's a mashup of Instant Camera and Telegram. So hold it up. Is it 1, 2, or 3? 100%. It is Instagram. Instant Camera, Telegram, right? So the next one is the original button was called the Awesome button. So in one of these apps, the original button that was created for that app was actually called the Awesome button. Was it 1, Instagram, 2, Facebook, or 3, Twitter? So go ahead, 1, 2, or 3. And if you don't know, just guess. What do you think? Okay, it is 3, Facebook, right? I'm sorry, 2, Facebook. So how many got that right? Awesome, see? So, but that button is not called the Awesome button. What's it called? Does anyone know? The like button. Yep. They actually, it was Zuckerberg that wanted it to be called the awesome button, and his group said no. The next one. Based on the number of users, this app would be the 5th largest country in the world. Based on the number of users, it would be the 5th largest in the world. Is it 1, Instagram, 2, Facebook, or 3, Twitter? What do you think? 1, 2, or 3? How many of you said 2? It's Facebook, right? Can you imagine the number of users that are using Facebook even now as we're talking about it, right? Okay, now this app invented the hashtag. Is it 1, 2, or 3? This app invented the hashtag 1, 2, or 3. It is 3. So it was Twitter that invented it. I don't know, to me, I guess I'm old, but that's still the number sign to me. I don't know. But the hashtag, they invented that. All that to say, honestly, is that we don't know everything, right? There are things that we will never, ever be completely sure about with social media. And in fact, once we think we know, there's going to continue to be more, right? And the funny story with the whole TikTok app is that a lot of our students are using that now. And I want to call it a time suck because it really can kind of really move you. And I have to tell you, it moves you to just continue to swipe or whatever you do when you're on it. The peril there is that it's going to take away from other things, just like other stuff, right? So before it was something else, and now it could be TikTok. If we look at the research around it, when we think about it, if you look at the specifics on that particular pie chart, we're talking about almost 20% that don't use it. But if we look at the opposite of that, that means that 80%, about 80% really, are on social media. Now, when we think of the amount of time, they're on almost constantly, every hour, or daily. Now, that is a lot of screen time, isn't it? So 80% compared to 20%. The other thing, too, I know we talked about that in some of the other research, but here you see how it's going down, the fact that face-to-face communication essentially is not as important, yet all the others are going up. Video chatting, social media, texting, because they're accessing the communication that way. Now, is that okay? I don't know. But it's definitely on the uprise, whereas face-to-face is going down. Now, the consideration is this. If we want our children to know the 4 C's, is this the best platform that we're giving them in order to learn those, right? So it's a consideration that we really need to make. Now, if anything, if we look at the research, if we look at, the facts or whatever, the bottom line is, what are the things that I can do to help my child as he will be on social media? And there are some of you that are already doing some of these things. So learn about the technologies firsthand, which means, yes, parents, you will have to create an account, even though you really don't want to. You can delete them, right? Which is, okay, but learn with them, right? Talk to your children about safe and dangerous habits. I think we tend to talk about the whole safety thing, but also be comprehensive when we're talking to them about what some of the dangers are with that, especially when it comes to a device that they're probably going to be using when you're not with them, right? Teaching them how to do those things in front of you will at least give them an avenue when things start to get uncomfortable, someone to talk to about that. So that's really important. Monitor their tech use, right? So the idea that they're creating these accounts, they may or may not tell you, but the idea of monitoring, doesn't have to be that media mentor again, doesn't mean that you have to constantly look over them. We'll talk about that a little later. Sometimes we have to give them space to learn and grow, and then support them with that. But monitoring their tech use can be a lot of things, depending on how you want for your family. And then the idea of boundaries for these devices, right? They're on devices a lot during the day. Sometimes they need a break from that, so they have to do something else, and you can provide access to that. In terms of the American Academy of Pediatrics, positive relationships are a result of consistent communication, minus the hormones, with your child, right? Key word there, consistent communication, right? And that consistent communication will always vacillate with teenagers. Having lived through 3 of them, I can say it can get better, but navigating through it in the moment can be really, really tough. So that idea of positive relationships is something that doesn't just happen. It's something that has to be nurtured, right? It's something that has to continue to be a priority in your family. And as it becomes a priority, when they leave you, it will be a priority for them as well. Or at least they'll know that it's a priority with you. So there are positive ways that you can use social media, right? In fact, you can use social media to complement someone, right? Some of you may see that in some of the Twitter feeds. A lot of educational tweets right now are really built around this idea of social emotional learning, that they realize that the whole child is not just about understanding math and science, and it's understanding a lot of things. Curating who you follow, whether it be an organization, a positive influence, but essentially people that are making a difference, right? Being able to see and follow those people, right? Using social media to support important causes. Greta Thunberg, right? She's actually in Los Angeles, I believe. She's coming to Los Angeles, or she might even be here. But she's a teenager, and it was all through social media that her popularity essentially blew up. And I don't know if you know the story, but she was able to speak at the United Nations and basically told them that it was the adults that made our world this way, and how dare you. A very powerful speech. There are positive ways that we can use social media. And so being able to build on what those positive things are shows that it's not like, I gotcha. You're doing this, and now I'm going to get you. I think that when we approach it that way, our students can get a little nervous. They can get a little worried to try and share things with you, rather than having that open relationship. So now we'll move into this whole idea of cyberbullying, right? And cyberbullying essentially is threatening someone electronically, right? And consider the fact that even if we took off the word cyber, that's an issue in some schools too, right? So the cyber is, in one sense, a replacement of that, but now it can actually be online. So here you can see that continually that there have been some of the statistics, 50% of kids and teens have been bullied online. That can only happen if they're participating in those applications where they can be a part of that, right? 1 in 3 have experienced these cyber threats. 50% of kids and teens have engaged in cyberbullying, either through negative talk or commenting and all those things. And 1 in 10 teens tell their parents that they've been cyberbullied. These statistics are staggering, but you have to consider that there's another part of that as well. If we go to the next slide, here you can see that there are avenues as a family that you can start to take. it'll talk about in the video 5 ways or 5 tips when we think about cyberbullying. So as we watch this, consider the 5 tips there. You'll notice that we use that website a lot, Common Sense Media. It's pretty powerful, but when we think about how this new arena of cyberbullying has occurred, there are things that we can do as families. So here they talk about not responding or retaliating because in the simplest sense, it's not productive, right? Things can just continue to perpetuate. The idea of saving the evidence, blocking the bully, and reporting it allows that there's now a trail that can continue to happen with this if it continues to occur, right? Whereas sometimes things are never shared, and so this type of activity continues to carry on. Reassure your child that you love and support him or her. The idea of this happening is just so invasive as a father. Like, how dare you? But at the same time, what we can do is we can respond to with the family that they know loves and supports them, right? That the assurance comes not from the fact that you're trying to do something about this problem, but that they know that you will support them no matter what, right? The idea of love and support can sometimes be more powerful than you, in one sense, retaliating or reporting it. The idea of helping your child to step away. Maybe it is an opportunity for them to just take a break from some of those devices that they're using. And then to have that conversation with them about that balance. Remember, we talked about the balance of building in these healthy relationships with them. And then the last thing is consider contacting the child's school. And in terms of that, the last sentence I think is pretty powerful. If bullying is happening online, it might be happening offline too. So there are, in that sentence, I think is just ripe with ways that you can support your child, right? Being able to build into them an understanding that no matter what happens, we're gonna protect you as best we can. But we're gonna do this together, right? That idea of balance, I think, is very, very powerful. And then the understanding of possibly having a child that is a cyberbully, right? And if you were to look at all of those things, it really points towards probably, if we were to look at those 3 types of parents, right? The one where they were out of control, where they were just letting them do what they want, right? Because they are not noticing that there's secretive or evasive behaviors, that there's those multiple accounts. There's addictive or habitual use within those devices. You'll start to notice that there are things that are happening with school, maybe even with their body, with their behavior, right? These signs all point to problems or other issues, but being proactive requires time and being ready and open for the difficult conversations. So, as parents, we know that when we take on that role, that it's not just the fun stuff. Most of the time, there's it's fun, but there are times when it's not fun. And not only do we have to embrace it, because we want them to embrace it, we have to embrace it too. So those difficult conversations are necessary sometimes, especially when it comes to cyberbullying. So right now, Javier will talk about how the idea of balance with their digital use.
So we've discussed how our society has changed. One of the biggest changes we've seen is that our students, our children, have a cell phone. One of the things that they're doing on their cell phone the most is social media. So we went over what social media was, tried to give you some hints, talked about the possibility of cyberbullying. But now we also have to talk about the fact that these things are happening. There are some dangers out there, but we can't just turn off the internet and go hide under a rock. We can't do that. We have to become those media mentors that we talked about earlier. How do we coach and mentor our children to become productive citizens of society who are still respectful, who are still, hardworking and courteous and just really friendly and good people? How do we do that in this modern society? How do we come to a balance of digital use, right? We are concerned about the increase, and we wonder how much is a lot of screen time? How much is a lot of social media? And I wish I had an answer for you, but there isn't. I'm also a father of 3, and I'll tell you, I had rules for my son that I didn't have to have for my daughter, right? I was reminding them that fair is not equal. We're talking about equitable, not equal. What one child needs is not what another child needs, because as you know, those of you who have more than one, they're so different. And the context of this is, that's why it's difficult to give you an answer, because we don't know your child. We know what kind of kid they are. You do. So you need to have that context when it comes to determining this balance of how much is a lot of social media use, how much is too much screen time. So when we talk about this, Rick's going to explain to you how you can help your child and let them know that you want their best from them.
So in this graphic, really, we're talking about this idea of involvement, right? But if you were to break out involvement, it isn't like 24/7, like with your kid all the time. It's essentially broken out into 3 areas. One is time. So sometimes involvement means spending time with them. That means friends, unfortunately, carpools, right? Activities with them that are, maybe not your most favorite thing, but they see that you are participating in their world. But the other thing is that their friends see that you're participating in their world as well. And they're watching simply. The second one is space. Now, this may seem a little different, but the space means that by being involved, it means giving them an opportunity to learn or do what they have to do without you, because it gives them a chance to build trust, for them to build your trust, and you for them to trust you, right? So it's a two-way road. But that space really does give them a chance to say, okay, you've given me this, now I want to try it on my own. And you're going to say, okay. But it also may mean structure, right? And structure, the idea that students want structure. There isn't one child in Long Beach Unified that'll say, I want structure. But they all want it because they know that that's how we're going to keep from doing things that we're not supposed to, right? And not even so much doing things we're not supposed to, but it's going to keep us on the right track. So time, space, and structure really head up this idea of involvement. as families, that truly will give them an opportunity for them to say, wow, they really do want the best for me. And they may never tell you, right? I feel that as a parent of 3 kids that are now finished with Long Beach Unified, it was through these areas that we were able to build truly successful adults in them. But it really wasn't me, it was them. They had to be the ones that wanted to be successful adults with that.
So here we're looking at the average use by 12-year-olds, 8 to 12-year-olds. So we can see that there's lots of use here. But when we talk about use, we have to also talk about what is not just the screen time, but what is the quality of the screen time. So in the next slide here, we're going to give you some tips of what is a healthy media diet. How much is enough, right? You are going to have a one-page link at the end of our presentation with links to all these videos and resources, okay? Just stick around to the end. We'll give you that one-pager where it has everything, where you can watch the video in its entirety. But the 5 tips really quickly here is choosing the good stuff. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit what is the good stuff. I'm going to give you some examples of that. You watch together. Okay, if they're watching on their iPad, sit with them and watch it with them, whatever program they're watching. Walk the walk. If you're asking them to turn off their phones at dinner, maybe we do the same thing, right? Keep a balance. Give yourself and your family balance of movie time, screen time, and outside time, and interacting with family and friends. Right? Have some tech-free zones in the home. Maybe that's a conversation. I encourage you to have that conversation with your children about what areas could we all agree should be tech-free. For example, the bedroom. That's the one recommendation that we really highly encourage is to have a tech-free bedroom so they don't have those distractions as they're trying to go to bed. Use screens sparingly with kids 2 and under. Choose age-appropriate quality shows and games and apps. Limit the screen time to 1 to 2 hours per day, depending on your child and what they're doing on it. Stay involved in your kids' media habits through co-viewing and create a plan with firm but reasonable rules. That's the key, firm but reasonable. And that's where this conversation with children have to come into play. Now, as we're learning with technology and screen time, we also have to talk about how students are learning on these devices. And what kind of things should they be doing on these devices that are enhancing the learning happening at school? So if we are wanting to have our students have some positive screen time, here are some suggestions also. Look for apps and websites that foster creativity and critical thinking. There's quite a few out there. Okay, we're going to share those with you in just a little bit. Look for apps and websites that are engaging. Okay, engaging in a positive way. And allow children to be producers of content. There's lots of websites that allow kids to create videos, create music, create posters, create artwork. All of those are really good skills that we should be fostering in the home. So, which apps do that? The first one is called Scratch. This little guy here, and you'll have links to all of these, teaches kids how to code through something called Blockly. It's a free account. It's been produced by MIT. Students just to log in, and they can start learning how to code. Really good content for kids to learn how to code. The next one is called Tinker. In Tinker, their whole motto is that flat is boring. So they allow kids to create 3D models. They learn the basics of engineering. You can actually go here, create something, 3-dimensional. You can go to the public library and 3D print it. I don't know if you're aware of that, but there's 3D printers in a lot of the Long Beach public libraries. You just need to have the file, go there, and print.
If you are taking notes, it's Tinker, Tynker. Tynker.
Thank you, Rick. The next one is Adobe Spark. In Adobe Spark, students are able to create digital stories using video, using images. Once again, this is free through Adobe. The next one is Duolingo. Duolingo offers students an opportunity to learn any language that they would like. Okay? So if they want to learn French or Chinese or Arabic, it doesn't matter. There's a language there for them to learn. The next one is just an app. The next three are apps. The first one is Lego. Kids love Legos. Lego's been around forever. They've created a digital version of these that kids are just really, really liking. The next one is iMovie. Comes in almost every Apple device now. It's a free app where kids can create their own videos and post and just share with families. The next one is GarageBand. Okay, also part of the Apple products, but it's also free. You can download and create your own music with this. So all of these apps that we're showing you allow kids to create, critically think, publish, and share. And then the last one that we want to share with you once again is Khan Academy. We shared with you last week what Khan Academy does. It pretty much offers lots of content in almost every single grade level, right? So if you want to learn how to do, they have things on science, they have things on coding, they have lots of things on art. So if you want to learn, this is a great safe place to go. And we're sharing these with you because these right here are actually, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because I said if it's free, if it's too good to be true, it's not free. But a lot of these are being funded by organizations and foundations that want to foster these skills in students. Okay? So these are ones that you can actually trust that your kids are actually using positive screen time here to be creative. Now, we've covered quite a bit for you in terms of content, what your kids can do. There's so much more information out there that we can't cover it all. So we always refer back to Common Sense Media in terms of if you have a question about whether this is a safe website, a safe app, they have information about just about everything in there. So if your child wants to use a social media app that you're not familiar with, this is a great place to go. And just a couple of pointers of what is a good website for you to use. These are the things that we're suggesting you look for. I would suggest you look for free and that they come from a reputable organization, right? From a reputable organization that you are familiar with. If it's a non-profit foundation and they're offering something for free, like the ones we talked about earlier, like Khan Academy, definitely. It has no ads, right? Look for things that doesn't have ads because those cause distractions. Look for places where they can log in with Google instead of their own personal account. Okay, when they log in with Google, they're logging in, through that account, so they don't have to put any more information on there. Looking for places that allow them to create content or learn content and keep some track and progress, like in Khan Academy. And it's from a reputable source like a university or a nonprofit. So just some little things to look for at websites that your kids are using just to make sure that they're kept safe online. We're going to close with a slide that Rick's going to go over with you that talks about when we do become these media mentors, what are the effects on children? So he'll talk a little bit about that.
When we consider the fact that we've talked a lot about balance, right? Are there indicators that show that there's a positive result with that? So the idea that balanced tech use has an effect. They surveyed about 1,400 families, and they noticed that through the data that when there is a balance of technology use within the home, that the children are less aggressive. Not only are they healthier, but the type of sleep, it's better sleep that they're doing, and that there's a lower risk of obesity. What this points to is that as families, we have not only a responsibility to look at the balance that they're using, but we have to also look at it in our situations too. Because for those of us that have high schoolers, they're going to be on devices a lot. They have to do the research. They have to do that homework. They're preparing for very, very important exams. So they need to have that versus someone that's, say, in first or second grade. So the idea that we talk about with balance really is something that has to be personal with you. We've also talked a lot about common sense media, right? And as we look at this, you'll notice that the idea, if you have your phones right now, if you actually want to go on there, commonsensemedia.org, if you type that out, you'll have a section just for parents. And that will give you some resources that we've been talking about tonight to provide for those areas that you have questions about. But Common Sense Media is an organization committed not only to building the idea of digital literacy, but truly helping to for families and teachers, educators, to understand the divide that we have in this digital realm, that we have to be able to close that gap, right? So they're doing incredible things with that. So here you can see the document that Javier was talking about. If you kind of scroll down a little bit, Javier, I'll give you the link in just a bit. But you'll notice that once you actually access this document, all of these blue text, those are links that you can actually click on. It'll open up a new tab, but you have lots of information with that. And it's easily accessible. All you have to do is type in bit.ly/MSTU 2019. And that'll give you access to that document. It's a digital document, so you will have access to this. All of the information that we talked about tonight is on there, as well as the contact information that provides you an access point with the district as well. But we do know that this is a huge topic, and we do appreciate your time tonight. We thank you for spending your Tuesday night with us, and we appreciate the fact that you're concerned parents and you want the best for your children. Any questions? Any quick questions? I know we have just about a minute or so with that. Any questions? I know you guys are writing down the link. But if there are no questions, we just want to say thank you so much on behalf of Javier and myself. We appreciate your time tonight. Thanks. Oh, of course.